I really appreciate you all having me here tonight to kind of share what I do for the City of Pullman and kind of what my job entails, and just kind of take a look high level at the City of Pullman stormwater network and system, and what the management of that really kind of looks like. So I'll kind of dive in here and get my presentation going. So again, I'm the Stormwater Services Program Manager, kind of a long title, I understand. So typically I'm just referred to as the Stormwater Manager here in Pullman. And I will apologize, I'm standing and I tend to move around. When I lecture my students, I pace back and forth in my classroom, so I do not stand still often when I'm speaking. So, but we'll dive right in. Maybe my clicker will work. There it is. So tonight, I'm really trying to give us a really high level look at stormwater management here in Pullman. It's really easy to get into the weeds with stormwater management with the permit that we work under. So we're going to take a look at the Pullman Stormwater Network itself, the MS4 as we refer to it, the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, kind of what that coverage and the components of that system that we see here in Pullman. And within that, we'll kind of talk a little bit about the uniqueness of Pullman. Then we'll talk a little bit about the actual NPDES permit, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit that's issued by the Washington Department of Ecology. That's the guiding document that we utilize here in Pullman. And it is specific to Eastern Washington. There's a Western Washington permit as well. Within that category, we're going to touch on just a few of the topics contained in that permit. Education and outreach is one, which we have a great partnership with the Palouse Conservation District that helps us in some of those areas there. They're fantastic with that. And then some of our municipal operations and what that kind of entails, that's really kind of the boots on the ground people. And then really kind of talk about some of the emerging trends and or concerns that we see kind of coming out of research or new requirements that have kind of hit in the new permit. And we'll talk a little bit about those. Then finally, we'll kind of talk a little about how the city works to address water quality specifically, through city code, how we can have the enforcement actions if we need to, but then also just kind of working through investigating issues, working through inspections, whether it be businesses or private stormwater systems, just to make sure we're getting the best water quality we can throughout Pullman. So with that, we'll kind of jump into the network itself. I'll bring a map up here shortly, but I'll kind of talk through a couple of things first, and we'll tie it all together with the map itself. So Pullman and WSU actually have a separate stormwater system. We're actually separate permittees also. So really what that means is WSU has their own network of pipes, catch basins, manholes, things like that. And the City of Pullman has ours. WSU has a couple of their own outfalls to the streams and creeks, along with Pullman having theirs. But really, since we're in the same community, we're all within the same city limits. Obviously, we have to work together, and we have those components of cooperation for the permits. We are considered a primary permittee. WSU is actually considered a secondary permittee. They essentially have a lot of the same requirements as the city, but just on a kind of a smaller scale. And so then kind of moving with just Pullman's management of our system, we really only manage the stormwater within city limits. Once we leave city limits, that's really going to become the jurisdiction of the county and or the Department of Ecology for major spills or things like that that are outside of the city limits. So really, myself and our maintenance and operations team, we really only deal with everything inside the city limits for Pullman. That's the extent of my permit compliance. So really, our network, it's quite large, even for a small community. And I'll talk a little bit about the uniqueness. I don't want to jump to the uniqueness yet, but as we all know, Pullman, we built this lovely town in the middle of 4 hills and a bunch of creeks and rivers that run through it all. And that all presents its own challenges that we'll talk about too. But we have ultimately kind of a large network of piping and catch basins and manholes, and it all works together through those detention and treatment ponds. All of it kind of works in unison in conjunction with each other to give us the best water quality we can here in Pullman. And then also downstream of us, we're also being good stewards of our neighbors. So really, in a lot of cases, we have treatment ponds or detention ponds that are capturing all of that runoff water. And we're trying to treat as much of that water as we can before it ultimately discharges into the creeks and rivers here in Pullman. So then kind of the final piece of our network, but for me is kind of the beginning of my network that I manage, and those are the outfalls. The outfalls of our network, we have approximately 167. I believe we're up to 168 now. We added one last year with a construction project. So we have 168 separate discharges to the creeks and rivers here in Pullman. There's a lot of different places to monitor and maintain and manage. But really those, for me, those are the beginnings of my systems and my networks, because that's where my problems get noticed. And then I have to use that investigation tool to work back up through my networks and identify the problems. So the outfalls are really the important part of our network for me to start really having that water quality and finding problems in the systems. So before I go too much farther into the uniqueness, hopefully be able to open this map and switch my screens. Mindy, did that screen switch to my map? Perfect. Okay, so I'll stay zoomed out for a second. So this is super high level GIS map that we have. This is actually the public map that everybody has available on the City of Pullman's website. And you'll kind of see at this level, we have a lot of colors, and it's pretty, but there's a purpose. And if there's a missing color, it's my GIS coordinator's fault, and I'll talk with him later if you have a specific color you need. So as you kind of zoom into the map, things will change. The colors will change a little bit. But I like to point out that the colors do have a meaning, and they have a meaning for me as the manager. And we did this intentionally. So as I zoom into these networks, I call them, I really get to see where the stormwater originates, and the colors kind of go away, but I can now see where everything starts. So I always zoom into this one because it's right by Koppel Gardens and this particular network. And so as I zoom in, I can see this is one of my wonderful 168 outfalls that I have here that discharges to the South Fork of the Palouse River. So really what I utilize this for in my system is when I have a problem and it's at this outfall, I have to utilize this map network to trace out and do my investigations. This is where I find the problems to solve, whether it be an illicit discharge of some sort, an oil sheen, or something like that. They come in a variety of different forms for those. So again, I have this particular map, but then I will, hopefully, if it's still up, yes, I will shift to this map that kind of goes hand in hand with those networks. These are now all of the drainage basins broken out throughout Pullman that will kind of correlate with some of those other networks. And I don't have it overlaid right now, but if I overlay this over those networks, then you can kind of see how the topography drains to the specific outfalls, catch basins, etc. And that assists us in all of those investigations as well. So the GIS mapping is honestly a super integral part of our operation here at the city. I utilize it almost on a daily basis through complaints or things like that to do checks on what's draining where. So I will switch back to this one. Go. Okay, did I get back to the right one, Mindy? Perfect. Okay, so now to the unique part of Pullman and our stormwater network. So Pullman has a couple of unique features to it. The topography is the first one. I kind of touched on that a little bit. As we all know, water runs downhill. And since Pullman was built in the middle of four hills, all of our stormwater, for the most part, has to go downhill. And that brings us to the second unique part of Pullman. Although we're surrounded by all this beautiful farmland that we all love, I drive back and forth every day to Endicott to home, and I get to see how it all changes throughout the year, and it's amazing. What we fail to really understand is, I think the misconception is as rain falls, as snow melts, we think that the water can just flow back into the ground, and it just goes back into the groundwater, and we don't have to worry about it. Really, Pullman is unique in that we have really great soil on the surface, but beneath that we have layers of really hard compacted clay that then is right above typically really hard bedrock. So in comparison, Pullman compared to other cities in Eastern Washington, what makes us unique is those 168 outfalls that we have. That's for a reason and by design, because we cannot infiltrate our stormwater back into the ground at an appropriate rate compared to other municipalities. Two examples would be Moses Lake. They have approximately 50 outfalls, and they're for their footprint of their city. But Spokane Valley is the example I like to use. They only have 3 outfalls currently to the Spokane River. As big as Spokane Valley really is, that seems unusual. But what they have that we don't is they have pockets of ground where they can actually put the stormwater back into the ground at a high rate. And it allows them to get rid of that surface stormwater much more efficiently than we can. So we unfortunately have to convey all of our stormwater. So that's one of the unique parts of Pullman. But that presents its own level of challenges just in itself. Okay, oops, get over here. All right. So, with the mapping and the network itself, none of that really means much without knowing what we're supposed to do with all of it. And this is really where the NPDES permit comes into play. We just recently had a new 5-year permit issued in August of 24. So I now have 5 years of some existing requirements that we have to continue to maintain and abide by for the next 5 years until the next permit cycle. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of really the pieces of the permit that I feel like I have a big part in, specifically the education and outreach. So I have the Palouse Conservation District. I work with them. They do a wonderful job. They do our Drain Rangers program with our elementary and middle school students. And it's a wonderful program. They get in there. They would be much better at that than I would to teach the little kids about that stuff. And so they do a great job there. And that's just one component of education and outreach that I have to work through. I also have to reach out to residents, homeowners, students. I also have to reach out to specific business types throughout the years of the permit cycle. And I can do that through various ways. One way we've done it is through utility bill inserts that just give some basic information about stormwater and kind of what we want people to look for and do. And then social media obviously is a big part of that nowadays. So we utilize that as much as we can. Pet waste management is a big piece of that. And Palouse Conservation District, again, they help us out with that part of it and getting those messages out. Then within the permit, we also have the municipal operations. And this is kind of where we are the boots on the ground people. These are our maintenance crews that I used to be a part of when I first started with the city. These are the workers that are going out. They are cleaning the catch basins. They are cleaning the storm pipes. They're evaluating our detention ponds, making sure they're functioning appropriately. They're doing all of the dirty work to make sure our stormwater system's functioning appropriately. And we're getting that quality storm water getting back to our streams and hopefully a better state than it was when it started its journey. So in the picture here, you can see this is our crews. They're simply just cleaning out a catch basin. The catch basins draw in that road runoff. They tend to fill with sediment, garbage, debris. And we need to clean that stuff out because eventually, if we don't, that stuff will make its way through that conveyance system. So that stuff's really important. So then in addition to the maintenance of the network, this group also responds to our illicit discharges. Those can vary. The ones that we probably respond to more frequently than other types would be sanitary sewer overflows. So this would be when a sewer pipe gets clogged and comes out of a clean out in somebody's yard or something like that and makes it out into the street. That's where the crews are really focusing on those illicit discharges. Cleaning those up quickly and efficiently really keeps a lot of those pollutants, bacteria, and things like that out of the waterways. That's why we try to really respond to those as quickly as possible. Most times we can handle those, but ecology does have resources available to us if needed, if spills are big, which do happen from time to time. Additionally, in the NPDES permits, we're starting to see them addressing some of the emerging trends, emerging chemicals, pollutants, and just kind of some of the concerns. I won't do 6-PBDQ. I should have put it in the last slot. I'll start with PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls. Typically, those are found in electrical transformers, but they found a lot of them showing up in building supplies, caulking, and things like that between 1950 and 1980 era. And so we're seeing some requirements come out to really manage some of that runoff from washing buildings down that were built or renovated in those timeframes. And so that's one new facet that we're seeing in the permit this cycle. Also the PFAS, which I had to have a window open so I could remember how to say this one. Per and fluoroalkyl substances, PFAS. And the PFAS specifically that the permit's calling out for us in this round are those that are typically found in a firefighting foam, aqueous film forming foams, or AFFF foams. A lot of times you'll see those airports and fire departments that are fighting fires that involve fuel, combustible fuels. Fortunately for Pullman, our fire department doesn't use AFFF foams currently. There was a law passed by Washington State for the use and manufacture of it a few years back, so it is kind of being phased out. But we're just kind of being asked to make sure that things like this are not entering our storm system. So it's just another one of those kind of emerging things that ecology is asking us to look for and kind of manage, which is great. Then we have the 6-PBDQ, which is the 6-PBD quinone, which is what most people refer to as a tire wear particle. This tire wear particle is a result of the chemicals used in tires to keep them rubbery and stretchy and make them last a long time. That's the goal. But this 6-PPD quinone is a result of them being exposed to ozone, air, sunlight, and these particles shed off into the roadways. And really what the research has found so far, and there's still lots of research going on, is that this has a high mortality rate for coho salmon and some other trout species, but really the mortality rate is really high for specifically the coho salmon. So this isn't currently in our permit. This is just kind of one of those emerging upcoming things that we'll be looking for getting guidance from ecology on how we're going to manage that and mitigate if there is a need to mitigate these 6 ppdq particles. So some of the challenges in kind of implementing the permit, sometimes we find barriers just simply with what's being asked of us, maybe because there's not clarity there. We work through those fairly well with ecology, but I think one of the permit challenges we see is not unique to Pullman, and a lot of it boils down to financial pieces. Everybody is always looking for funding one way or another. It's how municipalities are. Nonprofit organizations, everybody's looking for grants, funding, things like that. We do have a rate system in Pullman, so citizens do contribute to maintaining this stormwater system and the management of the water quality. So really what we see is we get some of these emerging things coming out. We're getting asked to do new things, and we have to really try to find new creative ways to manage that stuff to the best of our ability. So we don't have to go to the ratepayers. We don't want to, but there comes times when that becomes a challenge, and ultimately we have to look down that path. So we will, my clicker will work. Okay, so what is the city really kind of doing for that water quality? Well, a lot of it resides in what we're working through in that permit. But what we kind of have in our toolboxes as a city starts with city code. And city code is going to kind of push us back into what's the permit asking us to do. We're putting it in city code. It's codifying it, and it's giving us that tool to look to if we have to go through any kind of enforcement actions. Mostly what I see in Pullman so far in the 2 years that I've been in this position is when I have an issue or I come across an issue with stormwater quality, I've seen nothing but commitment from the residents of Pullman and the businesses. When we have an issue, everybody's really keen on working through a resolution, and we do that in a really amenable manner, and it's been really great. I've not had to write any nasty emails to people or things like that. And I don't want to do that. None of us want to really go down that path. And so that's been a really good experience here in Pullman so far. And I think that's just a testament to kind of the area we live in. I think the Palouse Conservation District has a lot to do with that, with a lot of the messages they get out to residents. So that's really great. Additionally, those municipal operations that we talked about, those workers are key to a lot of this. If we don't have them, our system does not function the way it should. And we're not going to get that high level of water quality being put back into our streams and creeks. Then kind of into my world, the stormwater program management itself. I have the inspections. I do annual inspections on my outfalls, on my stormwater detention ponds. The maintenance group, they inspect manholes and catch basins annually. But then it's also inspections of private systems. The private systems are just as important because they're not a part of my system. I don't go in and clean them and maintain them. So I have to work through those inspections as well annually. And then also the investigations, those are typically related to the illicit discharges that we see, or I get notified. Ecology sends me notifications from time to time about various complaints or somebody observed something. And I use those investigations, and those really will push us to find issues and continue to improve water quality. Additionally, we have an engineering function within the City of Pullman. I have a counterpart next to me, literally in the next office over, a development engineer, Nicole Morton, and that position really works to keep Pullman in a really good place for development, redevelopment, and even city projects with the rest of our engineering team, to where we're designing projects and we're approving projects that are always taking stormwater into account, whether that is appropriate treatment, detention, etc., prior to that stormwater making its way to the creeks and the conveyance systems. So that's a really important part of our program. And finally, we have a construction management piece, which is as these construction projects are going through their processes and builds, we want to make sure that those projects are not discharging pollutants, for one, concrete washout and things like that, but also just sediment-laden water. We don't want them to discharge all of that to the creeks. That has its own set of problems that it causes within the streams. So we kind of have all of these programs within the stormwater management program that kind of fit into that, what we do for that water quality day in and day out here at the city. Okay, so real quick, and then I will wrap up my side of this discussion, and we'll move on to Mindy's side of it, because I think she's got better information on her side of it than I do. That's why I had her do her side of it. So kind of what you can do just as residents, and you can pass this along to people, education and discussions, I think are going to foster more and better things for Pullman than just some stormwater manager standing up here talking to you in a webinar. As you have conversations with people, talk about water quality, talk about what you can do. So reporting spills, this is our spill hotline. It just takes you to our Public Works division. They'll ultimately patch you through to me if I'm here. But report spills, report things that don't seem right in terms of stormwater runoff in the streets and the creeks, things like that. I'm always happy to go investigate those. That's what I'm here for. I want to make sure we're doing things the right way. The big one for me is pick up after your pets. We have a lot of pets in Pullman. I don't remember all of the exact numbers, but the amount of pet waste that Pullman accumulates is pretty substantial. The thousands and thousands of pounds of dog poo. So picking up after your pets may seem like a small endeavor when it comes to water quality, but really it helps overall if everybody's contributing positively to picking up after your pets. And then if you can, if you're able, clean up debris and garbage from around catch basin grates. This particular catch basin in this photo, I've always liked this photo. This catch basin hadn't been maintained in a while, and it now had grass growing out of it. Now, this wouldn't be something I would ask people to maintain, but if there's garbage or debris, leaves, things like that, cleaning those off those grates, it's just a really small thing. We have over 3,000 catch basins throughout Pullman, and we only have 14, I think 15 now, maintenance workers that are not just responsible for stormwater maintenance. They're responsible for water, sewer, and street maintenance also. So just not enough people to do that. So it's very helpful when residents can do a really small piece of that that cleanup and maintenance. Clean up small oil and fuel spills from your vehicles. Oil tends to go a long ways in water. If you've ever seen drops of oil in a bucket of water. So cleaning up small spills like that is really helpful. And then washing your vehicles at car washes or in your lawn. I know that sounds kind of odd and unusual, but it's kind of the same concept. You're washing, grime and oil and things like that off of your vehicles. We don't want to see that go down the storm drains also. That'll just contribute to that poor water quality we don't want to have. And then I think we're going to do questions after. So I will hand this back to Mindy. We will go from there.
Thank you so much, Justin. Our favorite line to say with the kids for junior drain rangers is only rain down the storm drain. So we can use that for adults too. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. Awesome. So I'd like to wrap us up by dovetailing into talking about a key part of maintaining waterways, and those are our riparian areas. So what exactly is a riparian area? I've got a couple different things on here, some of the highlights. It's essentially the the interface between land and a river or a stream. Think of it as that lush green ribbon of vegetation you see bordering creeks and rivers. These zones really act as a buffer. Sometimes we even install new buffers to kind of simulate them. They filter runoff, they stabilize banks, they create habitat for fish and wildlife. They're also a priority habitat listed by the state of Washington. And so we'll dig into some of these areas of importance a little bit more too. So let's break this down with a couple visuals. The larger of the images here really shows you that riparian areas have some distinct zones. Starting upland, you find those drier land, grasses, shrubs, sometimes trees. And as you move towards the water, you enter kind of that woody riparian zone. Trees and larger shrubs start to really thrive here thanks to some additional moisture. This is also where a lot of our restoration work at the Palouse Conservation District is kind of focused in that part of the riparian zone. Closer still is the bank zone, and that's where roots are really vital for holding that soil in place, holding that soil together. And then finally, the channel zone is where the stream flows and where we would find aquatic or really water-loving vegetation. So each of these zones has a unique function, and together they kind of create that riparian ecosystem. Riparian areas do a lot of heavy lifting. They reduce erosion, which is a huge need in Whitman County and in Pullman. Justin talked about that a little bit, but keeping that topsoil in place is pretty vital. They can filter out pollutants. Riparian zones are really good at help filtering out some of those concerns, those chemicals and things that we have concerns about. They can provide shade that cools water temperatures and makes our waterways capable of sustaining aquatic life, fish and otherwise. They really do support biodiversity from birds and bees to trouts and beavers. It's a pretty broad spectrum of critters that can live in that riparian zone. And they can almost act like a sponge in helping to keep flooding at bay and really managing variable weather and climate events and things like that. A healthy riparian area is usually pretty capable of withstanding some threat from invasive species, but some of the species we deal with are pretty gnarly. So this picture, kind of in the bottom, is a reed canary grass. It may look familiar because it's pretty common in our waterways. Healthy riparian areas are critical, not just for wildlife, but for our communities, our agriculture, our clean water, things like that. Palouse Conservation District has a strong focus on restoring and protecting riparian areas. So I do want to talk about a couple in-stream structures that we use to restore some of that riparian health. BDAs, or beaver dam analogs, are human-made structures that mimic beaver dams. They slow the water down, they can trap sediment, and they can create ponds or pools. PALs, or post-assisted log structures, we have a lot of acronyms, are pretty simply log jams built with posts to kind of anchor them. They create, again, some more habitat complexity, and they encourage the stream bed to really change and form. Both of these tools do help restore stream function, especially in areas where beavers or large woody vegetation is absent or missing. Sometimes we need to protect the stream bank or redirect the flow, and that's where baffles and bank protection structures can come in. So baffles, if you the two pictures of 4 Mile on the top, 4 Mile Creek, those are good baffle examples. They're angled structures placed in a stream really to slow the water and reduce erosion. So similar to those other in-stream structures, but they can really help slow that water down. Bank protection structures can be a number of different things. They can be, again, post structures kind of like this. They can be root wads. They can be rock toe armoring. They can be just heavy vegetation kind of anchored in place, but they reinforce unstable banks while still allowing plant growth and wildlife to be present. These tools are strategic. We try to use the lightest touch necessary to really restore that balance. But if you've seen structures like this in any of our creeks in Pullman and thought that doesn't look natural, We're trying to simulate something natural, but we did put them there on purpose. Um, Here's where you can really see some of that impact. These are before and after photos to show those BDAs and PALs and how they can transform deeply incised or like really straight channels, really cut streams and creeks, or even dry channels into lush and more functioning riparian corridors. This is a 3-month difference between both of these photos. So that shows you how the channel pretty immediately was able to widen and slow, which are some of the primary goals of those. If you can see how the water might be held in the system longer, vegetation can rebound, habitat improves dramatically in just one season, let alone multiple seasons. Restoration isn't just about the stream, it's also about land use and plants too. There are a number of things we can do to really help livestock and riparian areas coexist in a healthy way. We see this a lot more outside of town, but it does happen within Pullman city limits as well. So that's a good example of that is here. The difference between the photos on the right is about 5 years. And this is where we put in some BMPs or best management practices on a property with heavy livestock use. So you can see some exclusion fencing, some fencing meant to keep the livestock out of that gentle riparian area, and some native plantings to help it rebound quickly. And then just out of view is actually an off-site watering system to reduce the bank trampling. So livestock still had access to clean, healthy water. It's just on a hardened surface and it keeps them out of that waterway. This project, like I said, is actually right in Pullman, so it's a pretty cool difference to see. Native species plantings throughout our riparian zones can also really greatly assist with restoration, and this work makes up a pretty significant portion of time in our resource conservation program at the district. There are a few photos here of some plantings going in and doing well, but we probably have thousands of similar photos. We do a lot of plantings in riparian areas. Speaking of plants, choosing native species is really key in these zones. Some of our favorites are listed out here, but these are just some highlights. It's not an inclusive list. These plants tend to be adapted to our climate, our moisture conditions. They provide food and cover for native wildlife, and they're still stabilizing soil and thriving in either those wet or varied conditions. We did have a conservation talk series in February that focused on these native plants. So if that's an area of particular interest for you, that is posted on our YouTube too. We don't just plant and hope that things live. We also measure and monitor after these projects have been implemented. So we monitor water quality, excuse me, to assess how restoration impacts the water system, how it impacts things like temperature, dissolved oxygen, nutrient levels, any chemicals that we're finding, turbidity, which is the quantity of sediment in the water. If after a big storm, you've seen that chocolate milk kind of water in our creeks, that is high turbidity levels. This work is typically done by our research and monitoring team at the district, and it helps us track the success of these projects and adapt our strategies. Plus, it creates a data-rich picture of watershed health over time, especially when we're looking at data from the City of Pullman and the Department of Ecology. The more data we have, the better picture we have. So at this point, hopefully you're wondering how you can get involved. If not, I'm going to tell you anyway. There's a lot you can do, whether it's volunteering to help us on a planting day or implementing practices on your own property, or even like Justin said, just spreading the word about our stormwater system and riparian areas. If you are interested in science and being outside, our Confluence Crew is a really cool program. This is our community science water quality monitoring program. We do have a training scheduled in early May, so now is the perfect time to engage with this program if you might be interested. We'll train you to take real measurements. We do visual, chemical, and biological measurements at a local stream site. That can be a site of your choosing, or we can help you find one. And we ask volunteers to collect data once a month. It's a fun, educational, and really valuable for our data collection. So it's a cool program. We also need volunteers for some of our practical kind of on the ground stewardship. You can help us keep local parks and stormwater clean by volunteering to monitor pet waste stations throughout the 4 hills in the city of Pullman, or adopt a stream segment with your organization when one becomes available. They are currently all adopted right now, which is a good problem to have. Both of these are supported through our partnership with the city of Pullman and are really excellent volunteer opportunities and ways to kind of help with our water quality. And luckily, we are also in the peak of our spring planting. If you would like to help us plant some native seedlings and shrubs, you can join us during one of our Plant the Palouse events happening each weekend now through May 3rd, or come out for our Earth Day stream cleanup scheduled for Saturday, April 19th. This one will be downtown Pullman on Missouri Flat Creek and the South Fork of the Palouse River. I know Liz dropped these signups in the registration links earlier when we first got started this evening, but I will also send them out in an email after the event tonight. So don't worry about tracking those links down. I'll get them sent to you. Finally, we offer some great resources for landowners and land managers, including some technical assistance and cost share opportunities for larger restoration projects. We do have an annual tree sale. Unfortunately, that has passed for the year, but we do that every year. And we've got some seasonal outreach events where you can find us and chat with us at an outreach booth about your riparian questions. We do typically hand out wildflower seeds and things like that at booths as well. So keep your eyes out for us. We would love to chat with you about more riparian stuff. We also have numerous conservation programs with financial or material assistance, depending on your land size, location, land use, things like that. If you're more of a DIYer or have a smaller piece of land, or even if you're a renter, there are some things that might be helpful. We have a really great publication called the Landowner Guide to, I'm going to read this so I get it right, Landowner Guide to Buffer Maintenance and Success. There we go. That is in digital format on our website. But if you're looking to do a project like this, a riparian project, we do have some printed copies in our office that we would be happy to provide you as well. We've got a number of additional resources on our website. We've got some great videos on YouTube, some helpful hints on social media. So we try to get as many resources to folks that are looking for them as possible.